And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, September 29th. Definitely not ADST, but thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Sorry for the delay. Some people had to use the channel. We can only really have one video live streaming at a time, but really wanted to come out to do a show this week. Didn't have time to do the show last week. I had to take care of some other things over at Multiplex, but really excited to be talking with you guys. First off, welcome. Second off, I say we jump right into the show, starting with our first review of the night, One Battle After Another. This is the 10th film by Paul Thomas Anderson, director of such films like Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love, my favorite movie of all time, Magnolia. And this is his first time working with Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a revolutionary by the name of Bob Ferguson, who has gone into hiding after many years of fighting in the revolution, taking down, going up against the U.S. military, essentially trying to attack immigration detainee centers, attack banks, doing all this sort of disrupting ways. And he has retired because he wants to essentially just raise his daughter. And little does he know that his daughter is now being targeted by the same people that he fought against many years before. And she ends up going missing. His daughter, Willa Ferguson, played by Chase Infinity. And he now has to get back into his old revolutionary ways, even though his mind is definitely not there, in order to try and rescue his daughter. Many people know this about me. If you don't, Paul Thomas Anderson is my favorite filmmaker, genuinely of all time, especially working today. There is not a movie of his, of all of his 9 previous films, there is not a movie that I wouldn't call great. I genuinely really, really love them all. So going into this film, knowing it was going to be the biggest budget film he ever made, I was very excited. I was very intrigued. I was trying to keep my expectations fairly cautious because filmmakers like Paul Thomas Anderson or like Martin Scorsese, when they release something that's maybe like a 7 out of 10, it hits different than when other filmmakers do. I think it's just because we hold them to such a higher standard. And I will say, I think as film watchers, I don't always feel like that's fair. I really do try to keep an open mind when I do go into these movies, even though it is kind of it's kind of inevitable with the cloud that some of these filmmakers have created, that we do always have these expectations. And thankfully, I can say not only does Paul Thomas Anderson deliver and bring a great film, but he delivers in maybe bringing the movie, not just the best movie of the year, but maybe of the 2020s so far. I cannot tell you how much I adored this movie with every fiber of my being. And I think the thing that is so interesting about this movie is that it truly feels like the culmination of every single thing that Paul Thomas Anderson has been tackling in all of his movies. He's always fascinated by like the end of an era. You look at Boogie Nights, and that's like the end of the 70s, told through the history of porn, going into the 80s as porn shifts from film to digital. You look at The Master, which takes place like right at the tail end of the 60s, going to the 70s, where everyone is where everyone's like idealism in America is starting to become lost. And everyone is now like putting their faith in religion, Inherent Vice, just around the same time, also like 60s going to the 70s, where it's like the end of the hippie generation, and how the world is sort of like finally coming to grips with itself. There Will Be Blood, even. It's the end of the American frontier, the end of the American dream. That's sort of like, There Will Be Blood is often considered like the great American, like modern American movie. It's very much like a commentary on the American dream. This one is very much, even though it is set in modern times, it feels like the end of like the like anti-corporatist ways of the 80s, and now what the American dream looks like in the 2020s. and how so many people are just now just like dead and just so pessimistic in life, and how the world is just sort of beaten up on them, and just every single like theme and idea he's ever like built up to feels like is being presented in this way, in a much more big and honestly angry way. Like Paul Thomas Anderson is not someone that tends to tackle like political ideas maybe like overtly as some other filmmakers. This is easily the most political film he's ever made, and it feels angry. You feel the anger that PTA has had at the current administration right now, and it is on screen, but it is not told through any like sort of like shoehorny way. You feel it. Wow, I just said shoehorny. Do not quote me on that. Well, I'm on video, so who cares? No, it is told in a very natural way, and you get to love these characters. And I think a reason why we love these characters is because is not only because of how well written they are, but also because the performances are absolutely incredible. Leonardo DiCaprio once again proves not only that he's a great actor, which I think everyone kind of knows, but that he is so good at not only giving great comedic performances, but giving these really great like comedic like dumb performances. Like I think of roles like when I think of him playing Bob Ferguson in this movie, he is this character who is always on drugs, who is always drunk, always he's thrust into the situation that he is absolutely not prepared for anymore. There's this constant running joke where his former revolutionary buddies try calling him in order to give him a code, and he cannot remember it because he's used so many drugs throughout the years. It's really funny. At the same time, you love this character because you see how much he cares. Like there's a scene early on where he's going to visit his daughter's school, and he's like trying to make sure that like, hey, are you teaching them like the right history? Are you're not skewing it in the way to make our country look like better than it really is? Are you not brushing past the dark parts of our history? He's always trying to respect his daughter's friends, even though he doesn't always quite get it. He's very much like a Gen X version of a revolutionary, where like he's very much annoyed by the Zoomers that have taken over the revolution. But he still does appreciate the fight for their cause, and he's just so funny. Every time he's playing like just super high, really just out of his element, always super confused. It's really funny. All the scenes he riffs off with Benicio del Toro, who plays Sensei Sergio, who is Willa's sensei in the town that they've been hiding out in. They're really good because Benicio del Toro is a super like stoic character, very like stone faced, but also is also just as committed to the cause that Bob is. And yeah, a big part of this reason why this movie works so well is because Leonardo DiCaprio is so funny. At the same time, Chase Infinity, who plays Willa, she is such a revelation in this film. She is this is her first ever film role, and this is a character that when you first meet her, she is obviously very annoyed by the fact that her dad is such a screw up, and the fact that her dad like clearly cares for her, but has completely thrown his life away, where he's just where they're like living out in the middle of nowhere. They do not have cell phones. They are completely off the grid. At the same time, as this character starts to, when this character does go missing, and when they do realize that their life is in danger, Chase Infinity plays both fearful really well. She plays determined really well when she starts getting mixed up in the revolution, and just all these all the emotions and all the places this character goes really can be put on how good Chase Infinity is. And the fact that this is her first role, I think, really shows that she does have a really great career moving forward. But I would say probably the performance that I think people are going to probably take the most attention towards is Sean Penn as the villainous Stephen J. Lockjaw. This is a character that in the first 45 minutes, because the first 45 minutes takes place in around this movie takes place modern day, and we see Willick being born. So I'd say when we're first introduced to this movie, it's probably around like 2009 or 2008 or so. And this is a character that Willa and that Bob and the members of the French 75 Resistance have been fighting all this time, and he's someone that they're always at odds against. I think it has been a second since I've seen a performance like from any actor that Sean Penn gives, where the character of Stephen J. Lockjaw is both super threatening and also super pathetic at the same time. Every time you see this guy, you know that he has the power to mess up all these characters' lives. You know he has this huge army behind him. Sean Penn plays a character super stoic, super like stone-faced, never really emotes, never tries to show any emotion, really just shows that like the people in this organization like are just trying to like are sort of trying to be like shells of human beings and are just working for the system. At the same time, I think Penn adds a lot of humor to this role with how pathetic he plays Stephen J. Lockjaw, both in how he walks. He walks the most stereotypical, like tankish military way. Anytime anyone like makes a comment towards his demeanor or towards his sexuality, he immediately like rises up. That's really the only like emotional outburst he'll get. A fun side plot with this character is he's trying to join this like secret society of people called the Christmas Adventurers Club, where if he joins this, he's not going to become the best person, but he is told that this is what will happen if he joins this. He will officially become a superior person, and that's really his whole motivation for why he wants to track down Willa and wants to take down Bob, is because he just wants to be viewed as superior because he has this really inferiority complex. Sean Penn is so funny. I've been hearing a lot of Oscar talks for this role. It is rare where an actor who already has 2 Oscars, which Sean Penn has, he won for Mystic River and Milk, to win a 3rd, but I could totally see him getting a nomination. And genuinely, I think this is maybe the best Sean Penn performance I maybe have ever seen. He is so funny, and I cannot begin to say all the levels that this character goes through. This is a performance that could easily come off cartoony or annoying in a different actor, but I think the fact that Sean Penn plays it 100% straight and also is able to really like pick at the little pathetic parts, I think is what makes this so funny. The rest of the supporting cast is also great. In the first 45 minutes, Willa's mom, whose name is Perfita Beverly Hills. The character names in this movie are awesome. She falls in love with Bob early in the movie. She's played by Teyana Taylor. She is such a powder keg for the first 45 minutes, where even though she's only in a short part of the movie, her presence is felt throughout the entire film. She is super hyperactive throughout the entire film. She is the one leading the revolution. The revolution. Her character comes at odds with Bob, where even though they are in love, they just have different ideas on how they want to live their life, and I think that's super fun. Like I said, Benicio del Toro, so good in this film. He knows the exact right key to play this part. He's maybe a little bit more like underkey than a lot of the other characters, but I think the character of Sergio really benefits from that. And then Alana Hine has a really small part. Wood Harris has a small part. Tony Goldwyn, without spoiling his part, he plays a really important villain in the film that is introduced in the 3rd act. But yeah, this whole cast is firing off all cylinders. Paul Thomas Anderson is phenomenal at juggling a lot of different character threads at a time, and this is no different from any of his other big ensemble films, even though the focus is almost always on Bob and Willa Ferguson. But yeah, I've talked a lot about the story of this film. The technical aspects are also absolutely impeccable. Johnny Greenwood composed the score to this film. This is his 6th collaboration with Paul Thomas Anderson. The first time he collaborated with him was with There Will Be Blood, and he has scored every other film since. Once again, the score is absolutely incredible, and I cannot think of this movie without thinking of the incredibly, like, honestly, like, in a way, undertone score where it just sounds, where there are points where, like, Johnny Greenwood, just to add tension, will just have one piano note just clicking, and that sounds annoying, but it creates such a mood and such an atmosphere where you can't help but, like, have your heart pumping when you're just watching characters talk on a phone, when you're watching them run away from the police or run away from the military. And the final like climax of this movie, the score plays such an important part in this, because you're just watching all these characters separated, trying to run away from each other or chase each other, and the score is just so ingrained in your brain that you can't help but remember it and fall in love with it. So yeah, Johnny Greenwood, he's always been a phenomenal composer. This could be my favorite score from him, and that is saying a lot, because I love the score to There Will Be Blood. I love the score to Phantom Thread. I love the score to Spencer. He's composed a lot of great music for movies. And then yeah, the direction. This easily feels like Paul Thomas Anderson's biggest film in the scope. that you are watching. You are watching a multi-city like road trip with watching these characters like chase after each other. The major climax, slight spoilers, I guess, it ends in a final chase where all of the characters are where Bob is trying to find his daughter, Steven is trying to find Willa in order to kill her. Will is just trying to run away to get back to Bob, and all of the characters are in different parts of California, and just the amount of scope and the amount of setting and detail that it establishes just from the cars is so special. There are a ton of wide shots where you're just watching the landscape and watching these small key little points, whether it's a car driving on the road or whether it's two characters talking in front of a mountain, and it just feels so huge. I saw this movie twice already. I saw it in IMAX and I saw it in Dolby, and seeing it in IMAX in 70mm really just shows the scale that Paul Thomas Anderson was working on. Also, seeing it in Dolby, I gotta say the sound design is impeccable. It has been a second where I've heard gunshots in a movie sound this loud and sound this real. And if this is where the $135 million went, it was well spent, because PTA shows that that while he doesn't need the huge budget, because he's made plenty of phenomenal films on a smaller budget, if you give it to him, he's not going to go overboard. He's still going to make an incredible film, because he is so impeccable with his direction. Like I said, the third act chase, maybe my favorite scene of the year so far. It's either that or the big music montage in Sinners. But yeah, this huge chase where you're watching all these characters like try to catch up to each other, without spoiling how it sets up certain things for how characters get out of certain situations, it is incredible. And yeah, the way this movie builds to its climax is really phenomenal. It is a longer movie. It is 2 hours and 45 minutes. At the same time, it flies by, and I think a huge reason for that is because each act is very specifically designated. The first act is shot in a very intense way, in a borderline, like almost kind of like pseudo-documentarian way, where it feels super hardcore. It feels super visceral in watching these characters like do these crimes to disrupt the government in order to disrupt the system, because they have these views and they want to be heard. Every time we have it's shot in very low lighting, because a lot of it takes place during the dusk time, and I that's very well done. Second act is set in the present. It has a much more comedic tone to it. You are watching Bob try to find his daughter, trying to interact with everyone. It is a big chase. It honestly feels like you are watching The Big Lebowski, and Bob Ferguson is the dude, if the dude had more of a social compass, and if he cared a little more, and I think that's why it's so fun. And then yeah, that third act, a lot of the comedy is taken out, but is now you're watching every single character motivation has come to light, and you're watching these characters just chase after each other, and it is really well done and impeccable. Looking at my notes, like I said, the humor works really well. Everything from Bob Ferguson to Stephen J. Lockjaw to the Christmas Adventures Club. Everything within it is very much joking and mocking these secret societies, or these maybe not tech bro, but these elite societies that you hear these rich people want to be a part of. And it really just distills how stupid they are. They all hail Santa Claus as if he's this godly mythical figure, and it's so funny there. It is it's borderline, it almost goes too far, but Paul Thomas Anderson is such a master of tone that he's able to dial it back slightly, so that way you're always taking it seriously just enough. But yeah, I'm really trying to think of things that didn't work from this movie, just to find nitpicks. And honestly, I am really struggling. Like I said, I do genuinely believe this is my favorite film of the year. It feels like the culmination of every single thing that Paul Thomas Anderson has wanted to say as a storyteller and as a director. And yeah, I cannot deny that I absolutely adored it. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being awful and 10 being incredible, you heard me say it's my favorite film of the year so far. You heard me say it's maybe one of my favorite movies of the decade. This is my second 10 out of 10 for 2025. It is absolutely masterful. I don't like throwing around the M word a lot. I genuinely do feel like this is a masterpiece. I think there's a lot of things that Paul Thomas Anderson is saying about how he views the world right now, how he views America, and I think that is really, I think it's really fascinating when you do have a filmmaker with such a strong viewpoint get the money to express their view in a big budget way, regardless of whether or not you agree with it. I think that personally is what art is all about, is artists sharing how they view about the world and just trying to craft a great story around it, which is what this movie does. I highly recommend you go see this movie. While it's not technically an original movie, because it is loosely based off the novel Vineland, written by Thomas Pynchon. It is a very loose adaptation where it is adapting basically the themes alone. The story is very much original. These characters are original, and I cannot just get past how incredible the filmmaking is in this movie. I would recommend anyone see it to make up their mind for themselves. I saw it with two friends the second time. They absolutely adored it. I have not heard too many people say they didn't like it. So if you go see this, I genuinely think you will really, really love it. It is kind of a challenging movie, but I also think it is a very entertaining and thrilling movie at that. Well, I say we jump right into our second review of the night, that being Eleanor the Great, directed by Scarlett Johansson. This is Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut. It is about a very elderly woman played by June Squibb. Her name is, as you might have guessed, Eleanor. Her husband died a few years ago, and her best friend had just recently died. And her best friend, who was a Holocaust survivor, always told her stories of the Holocaust. Eleanor is someone who converted to Judaism in the 50s with her husband, but she was not a Holocaust survivor. She ends up feeling very, very lonely, so she starts attending a bunch of meetings of Holocaust survivors and essentially starts telling her best friend's stories in order to gain a new friend group. In these focus groups, she ends up meeting, what's the character's name? Nina, played by Erin Kellyman, who is also Jewish and who her mother has just recently died. So they end up forming a bond through grief and through mutual connection and through mutual interest. Even though throughout the movie you sort of know we are building towards the fact that Nina's going to eventually learn that Eleanor is lying. This is kind of a tricky movie to talk about because there are a lot of things I like about this movie and there are a lot of things I don't like. Just to get this off the bat, this is a very, very quaint film. None of the scenes feel very big. It is actually very funny to juxtapose this with the last movie I just talked about, One Battle After Another, which felt huge in scope. This movie obviously feels much, much smaller, which makes sense. This is a movie about a 90-year-old woman just living her life in New York, trying to make friends, and I think the direction really does work from Scarlett Johansson. This is her first film as a director. Not a super like showy or visionary movie, but it gets the job done. And I do just love the idea that maybe Scarlett Johansson was like, hey, I love June Squibb. I want to direct this movie to be a acting vehicle for June Squibb. And I will say June Squibb is the main reason why this movie works, because she plays the character of Eleanor in such a fun way. Notice how I didn't say likable, because I think the fun thing about this character is, well, it could be so easy to make this character like super sweet and super loving and super like, oh dear me, honey, are you okay? No, Eleanor is kind of like she is very much annoyed at the younger people in her life, not in like a super angry way, but just in a way of like she'll go to the grocery store, ask for pickles, and the grocery attendant will say, oh, the pickles are over there, and Eleanor is like, well, those are the pickles I want, and the attendant will say, there's only one type of pickle, and then Eleanor's like, oh, please get your manager, because I don't want to be talking with someone that doesn't know the difference of pickles. And just all the sort of conversations they have there is really fun. The highlight of this movie is the chemistry between June Squibb and Erin Kellyman. Erin Kellyman is someone I've seen a few films recently. She was pretty good in 28 Years Later. And she is also really, really great here. The scene where you do have Eleanor and Nina bonding over their trauma, but also bonding over their Jewish faith. I think it's really, really beautiful. All the scenes where they go out and get dinner. Nina ends up wanting to write a story about Eleanor because she finds her story so fascinating. You can probably see where, without spoiling, where that story ends up going. But yeah, that is really sweet, and their chemistry is really, really great in the movie. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays Nina's father. He's also very good. Doesn't have like a ton to do. Doesn't like blow anything out of the water. But Chiwetel Ejiofor is a great actor, and he brings a lot of heart to this role of someone that wants to connect with his daughter, but maybe isn't connecting in the best way possible because they have both gone through this huge form of loss. Him losing his wife, her losing her mom, and without spoiling, I do think the ending is very satisfying where all the characters end up. I think the only issue is in order to get to the ending, you have to go through the very cliche liar revealed story. I've talked about this on the show many times. I think this is one of my least favorite tropes, where when you center a movie around a character lying, or specifically around a likable character lying, where we are supposed to root for them and we are supposed to really get behind them. I hate it because you know you're going to get to the scene where their lie is found out and all the characters end up sort of like turning on them for a portion of the movie. The movie stops for like 10 to 15 minutes until we eventually get to the point where they all end up forgiving them, and we can just live on with the rest of the movie, and they go on their merry way. I don't hate it because I just don't think good characters should lie. I'm not that type of movie watcher. I just hate it that we all have seen the story so many times, and you just know every single time the second that character lies the first time, you know exactly where this plot's going to go. You can turn off the movie at that point because you know essentially what's going to happen, and without spoiling too much, this movie does that exact same thing. I was super annoyed. This is a movie I could have enjoyed more, but the fact that it does go this route does make me just roll my eyes so far and just so hard. And I can't really say it's like a good movie because it uses this cliche so poorly. At the same time, the actors do approach this with enough heart and with enough good faith that I can't help but enjoy it to a point. And like I said, I do think the ending moments where you do have the characters finally telling Eleanor's story and her own story that isn't that is her own story from her own past. I do think that was really sweet. This is a movie that is around 98 minutes, and it's so funny that One Battle After Another was a movie that was 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it flew by. This is 98 minutes, and by the end of the movie, I felt like we were sort of dragging our feet a little, where it felt like this is a movie that had maybe like 80 minutes of good storytelling, and we were really trying to stretch the end to get a feature-length film. But I digress. I still do think it was an enjoyable film. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I would probably give this a 6.5. It does some things that annoy me. It's not like amazing by any means. At the same time, June Squibb is very good, and it is a story that you can't help but just be that just sort of smile at the end with how all the pieces finally fall. This is probably not a movie you need to see in theaters, but when it does come streaming, I do think check it out. It's not as good as Thelma, which is another movie that June Squibb starred in last year. But if we keep getting more June Squibb starring roles, who is an actress I believe in her 80s or 90s, I'm all for it because I think she's a very likable actress. But thank you all for watching this week. Again, sorry for the late show time. We had to take care of some things on the video store. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It helps grow our channel a lot. Next week, I'm going to be reviewing The Smashing Machine as well as Anemone. That's Anemone. Tricky title. Daniel Day-Lewis is coming out of retirement to star in his son's movie. I'm excited for that. Also excited for The Smashing Machine. Really hope both those movies are good. I am going to be back here next week, I promise. Really trying to get back in the weekly groove again because I just like talking movies with you guys. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and until next time, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.